Well, welcome. Today, Lauren, Christine, and I are going to be talking about Sun transits 25 and 17. And we're going to explore around and see what we can learn about that and what we can play with over the next two periods of 5.5 days. But just before we got on, we were talking about what's happening now here. We're in gate 36 still, and all of us feeling disrupted in different ways. And like scheduling and energy and things just seem to be out of whack.
Yeah.
So what's happening for the two of you?
Yeah, I mean, it is gate 36, which is the gate of crisis. It is looking for new experiences, right? And it is bringing a flavor of crisis to those experiences. So I guess in some ways, what we were talking about probably does align pretty closely to that energy. So I hadn't really put that together until just now. So maybe that informs some of what you were thinking, Lauren.
I was wondering when I thought about this game when we recorded it previously. When I think about crisis, I think of crisis coming from the outside. But what I've been experiencing has been more of an internal crisis. And until just this moment, I was like, oh, that can also be a crisis, right? If and as I was describing this imbalance in mental and physical energy, it's like one is, working and the other isn't, so that doesn't provide for much productivity. Um, that can feel like a crisis.
And crisis is usually a precursor to something shifting. But I think we've been talking about the discomfort we're feeling in that pre-shift because we don't know what's coming. It's like, because like, what's it going to be?
And we are definitely at a shifting moment energetically, right? So we're just about to walk into the spring equinox, which, is the beginning of a whole new cycle from an astrological perspective. We are walking in gate 25. We're coming into a new bottom trigram, the trigram of thunder, which is the arousing, which is very much aligned with this, starting new things, right? This is when we start planting plants and all of that kind of stuff. This is when we're seeding for the future. And we have not been in that energy, right? Right now, we are not in that energy, right? We are in this ending energy. So there's always a bit of a crisis between the beginnings and endings of anything, right? And so it's interesting that we would be in the gate of crisis, feeling these internal crises in some form or fashion, and then, prepping hopefully for moving out of that into something that feels a bit more productive.
You just made me think about Clarissa Pinkola Estes talks about life, death, life cycle, and sort of like this coming out of the end of winter, and the pot, and then life is coming again. So this connection to nature, uh, and then it's that needing maybe to get a little more connected than we have been. Being like, especially where I live like in the winter, because it looks really nice out there, but you only foray out so often, so the connection kind of gets cut off. So time to get out and reconnect.
Lois, that's interesting you'd say that because that's what I did this weekend when I couldn't find equilibrium in anything, even my favorite um, projects of cooking. I didn't feel satisfied in it. What I was cooking didn't even taste good. So I was like, there's only one answer, and that's to get outside. And it's not so pleasant here in the Northeast, but there's a few beds that have thawed, and the lavender needs trimming this time of year. And speaking of the life and death cycle, you trim it back, but from those clippings, you can make new plants. And so I made a whole basket full of clippings and then went down in the basement and began dipping them in rooting powder and made a whole tray of baby lavender plants. Felt great. I wish I had more and could have kept going. Because as soon as I stopped doing that, I could feel that imbalance, but it worked. So it doesn't take much.
Well, and I think too, because it makes sense, right? It makes perfect sense to trim back a plant when it needs to be trimmed and use those trimmings to create new plants, right? Like there's nothing that we are more biologically connected to than something like that, right? And then but yet we're living in a time with so little sense to be made of it, right? And so I could totally see where planting lavender would be like, oh, this my body knows how to do. This my mind understands, right?
And this is part of what Gate 25 is calling us to, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love 25. It is one of my favorites. I carry it, Lauren, you carry it. I don't think, Lois, I don't
No.
think it's in your design, right? Gate 25 is the is it is this beginning energy, right? It's this beginning gate that's the first gate in Aries, again, which is the beginning of the astrological new cycle. And gate 25 is the spirit of the self, right? And I've talked about it in many places in in these series because it is the gate of universal love, right? This is the energy that we all carry that at some level recognizes that we are all part of something much greater than this body, these bodies that we're in would, convey, right? We are all connected to everything. This is kind of when I think of this gate, I think of the Gaia principle, right? Like we are of the earth and this energy carries that and it knows that. And so getting back in connection with this idea is, I think, really paramount to where we're going in the future, right? Like this is the piece that we've kind of somewhere lost the thread on in modernity. And so the sun will be in 25 from March 18th to the 23rd. It will be conjunct Neptune also, which will be interesting, I think, because Neptune is just such a huge energy. Um, it also just may be a little bit hidden to us this time around because of that. So, as we're going through these days, thinking about what this universal love is showing up for you or not may be a little bit trickier to discern. I don't know. It'll be an interesting experiment. Um, but it is in the identity center in the human design body graph, and it is connected directly. It's the only energy that connects directly to the heart energy, which is the love, sense of love on the mundane plane. This is sense of love on the higher spiritual plane. And so this connecting energy, I think, is really powerful. It's about courage and um, competition, but in its best form, competition just to make things better, right? Not to just compete to compete. But it is this energy of initiation, right? And so I will be curious to see what new things get initiated in this time frame, and hopefully, are they being initiated out of love?
It's interesting what you said, like this about the getting connected to nature and then about the body. And the shadow in Gene Keys is constriction. And I was thinking, like, so there's a conundrum here because we're like, as being part of this universal entity or whatever we want to call it, we are constricted in individual bodies. And yet the body seems to be the avenue to how do we get connected again. And I think that's where the connections got lost. We're so disconnected from ourselves that it's difficult to connect to anything else. So that feels like work.
Yeah, but Lois, I think the time of year lends itself to that because isn't that interesting? This gate would show up as spring is ushered in with the equinox, and we're being invited back outdoors and to reconnect with our true nature, our true self out there. And in some areas, it's not as pleasant as others, and as spring comes about, but there's still signs of it. And I think finding a way to bring that in, if being outdoors isn't particularly pleasant, clipping branches and bringing them indoors and watching, forcing their bloom, or whatever it is, to bring a little bit of that into your space, I think could be really important in helping us connect to what's real, which is actually one of the questions that Hilary Barrett asked in her translation of the hexagram 25, is what is real. And there isn't anything more real than what we find outdoors.
There's also where we're afraid of what's real. Like I was just thinking about this being disconnected from our own physicalness. And a lot of it is the fear of what we're feeling, what could happen. And so it's like if we keep busy enough and go shopping enough, we don't have to pay attention to that. Right. So this like staying away from this fear. And it's funny because there's a polarity in here too, because there's the fear of this and it's stopping us and slowing us down. And at the same time, those fears are what has allowed people to survive, because if we didn't have them, we'd probably get into some really, really deep trouble, you know. Get eaten by a bear or something like that.
That would be real.
Yeah, I think it's interesting what you both are talking about because it points directly to the polarity gate in this gate 25. The polarity is gate 46, which is the determination of the self, right? In human design, we talk about that being the love of the body, right? And there is this real embodied aspect to this energy, and again, like you said, Lois, we live in a time that that puts a lot of fear into us around our bodies, especially female bodies, right? There's a lot of conditioning that goes on there, a lot of ideas about what bodies should, look like and be capable of and do, and how they should be on display for some people, right? Like this is a lot of what goes on in our culture. And so part of, I think, especially as women, the disconnection we have with our body is absolutely it's from outside of us, right? Brought to us at a very young age. And it's very difficult to untangle that for ourselves, which I think is again why nature becomes such a huge piece for anybody that is trying to, disentangle that, because being out in nature is a place where you can be your truest self. You can be innocent, right? Which is the spirit of gate 25, is innocence, right? And to drop, the other, for women, the male gaze, right? You can drop all of the stuff and be with yourself in nature, in what is, a really regulating space, right? We know this about plants and trees, and, nature is regulating for us. And it makes me think about back when we were doing more polyvagal stuff. We had that really simple exercise that we were doing where we just had people use each of their senses and try and just kind of make a list or do a collage or something about like each sense, something that helped regulate them, right? Maybe a warm cup of tea, or maybe they love the smell of roses, or whatever, we try to map back from each sense how something that would regulate us. Or something like that was a really great exercise, I thought. It was really useful for people to have that on hand for when they were feeling dysregulated. They could be like go to that paper and be like, what makes me feel better? Right?
Well, and then there's a playfulness that can come up in that too. It's like I can just sort of experiment around with the things that make me feel better, because we were talking about the polarity and the gates here, and the shadow in 46 is seriousness. And you think about when you put constriction and seriousness together, things get really tight, and it's like watching how that impacts your body. And if then like you're doing this exercise you're talking about, Christine, and you're having your tea or making your tea, and just paying attention to how your body changes, how your breath changes, as you relax in and become more connected to yourself.
Well, following right up on that, let's talk about the Gemmo that might help with that. And I was thinking about this um, shadow part of this gene key and this being constriction. And immediately the extract Lithy comes to mind because Lithy is the Gemmo you go to first of all at times of constriction, and its essence is expansion. And so it feels like exactly the Gemmo of this gate, right? Because the state, you need it, you're constricted, but it brings you through to a state of expansion. And we have to be expanded to experience universal love. And you mentioned breath, Lois, and that's where many folks, right, feel their constriction is in their breathing. And Lithy on a physical plane is going to work like a broncholator. It's going to dilate the bronchi so breath can come in more easily. But we think about that on a emotional level. I mean, we all know how constricted we get when we feel that need to protect ourselves. And I think this is rampant these days because we honestly don't know what's coming next. And hopefully you have a safe haven in your home so that you can feel at peace there. But beyond that, it's more challenging. And I think Lithy is absolutely the extract to consider. And it helps us not only physically move through this expansive state, but into expansive thinking. And that's really what we need for this change in consciousness that's coming.
Yeah, and it seems too like this Lithy, like using that during this time might be really great because again, I think, there's other stuff going on beyond just the sun in 25, right? We have a new moon on the 19th in the middle of this. And then we have the spring equinox, like I said, on the 20th, and Mercury stations direct on the 20th as well, right? So all of those things I think are expansive as well, right? And so I do think we are going to shift out of this time that has felt pretty chaotic and constrictive and just, I don't know, oppressive in some ways. I think that there is this opening up that's coming at us, in very quickly, and hopefully we'll feel really good. And I think a little Lithy would probably help make that even better.
Well, it seems like the Lithy and the expansiveness from that would make it more possible for us to be with those things that we're afraid of. And in that, then there's more opening of the heart. It's because like with the universal love, we need to start with loving ourselves first. So that opening of the heart that could happen as a result of the expansiveness. So I'm gonna have to take some Lithy after this.
And I think that'll be good for us because after we are done with gate 25, we walk into, the sun moves into gate 17, which is the gate of opinions. And it's an ajna energy, it's a mind energy, and it is a powerful energy, but it is, in its shadow, there's a lot of stuckness in it, right? We can get really stuck in our opinions, and we live in a time in a moment that has a lot of opinions that are just stuck, right? And so having, gone through this moment of universal love, hopefully expanding a bit, having some of the other astrology open up a bit, hopefully some of this will, you know, help in this 17, space that we're going to be in. But it is going to come at us, and it is, I think, going to feel different than 25. And so um I don't, I carry this as well. I have a lot of Aries energy in my in my chart, so I'm kind of curious to see what it does for my opinions. But the gift is farsightedness, right? And this is what I think is really lovely in this energy. Like you can have thoughts and ideas, and this is what gate 17 is doing. It's organizing thoughts and ideas into ways that people can articulate them out into the world so that others can understand them, so that we can move into the future together, right? This is the crux of this energy. And farsightedness is necessary, right, for all of us, right? We all have to be able to see around as many corners as we can. But again, we can't get stuck in thinking we know the future. We're never going to know the future, right? We just have to have some broad strokes about what we think the future could offer us, right? And then work towards those things. So it's the idea of having thoughts and ideas and opinions, but not holding on to them too tightly. And so this could be a fun practice, I think, during this time, like noticing your opinions and seeing which ones you might be holding on to a little too white knuckly.
And it's like when we hold on too tight, is everything then when we go back to being constricted again. And the other thing is that when we're holding on to our opinions and things too tightly, it seems to push other people away. You know, because if you're getting dogmatic and doubling down about your opinions, that energy, it 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 isn't pleasant to be around. So I think watching if we're getting too tight in our opinions or looking too much for the flaws. I mean, it's wonderful for people to be able to see what is wrong with things. But if all that you can see is what's wrong with something, it's too much, you know? Yeah. You're muted, Lauren.
I want to jump in right away with the Gemmo because it fits so beautifully with what you two are saying. So Hazel is the extract I want to think about. And so this is what Hazel does is it brings elasticity to connective tissue. So we have these connective tissues between our cells, and this is what, we're in. So we're looking at the organs of the lungs and the liver, particularly when we think about Hazel. And the liver is where we hold a lot of very strong emotions like anger and resentment. And so when I think about that, these old prejudices, which this gate is giving us an opportunity to release. I think what we need to release things is spaciousness, which I think Lithy helped us getting there, getting rid of that maybe acute constriction. And now what we want to do that we've got some room is we want to stretch even further. And that's what this gate, I think, gives us the opportunity to do. Because what we want to be able to do is have our opinion and respect others' opinions. This is something, though, added interest here is Hazel is a really welcoming plant. It loves company and it welcomes its soil to other company and companion trees and shrubs, and it gets along very well. It's used often in permaculture because they form very nice guilds or polyculture plantings. So there's the part of ourself that does really well in groups and plays well, and then there's the very opinionated part of ourself that holds on to grudges and prejudices. And so I think it would be an interesting experiment to work with this and maybe put yourself towards the end of these 5.5 days in situations and test it, see, particularly in situations that you might feel more constricted or frustrated with people and wanting to share your opinion in the right way. But give yourself a few days on Hazel first.
It's like it would create more space.
Yeah.
And as I was thinking, is like because when we are shifting and changing, it takes some time. Like it doesn't just happen all at once. So it takes some patience, some sitting with, some getting to be accustomed to what's new and what's different. And both gemmos together sound like they would set us up to be able to do that more comfortably. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we'll need that because again, the polarity gate for 17 is gate 18, which is the gate of correction, right? And so as the sun is in 17 forming opinions, the earth is in gate 18 looking everywhere to how to make things better and different, right? And so which can be really lovely, right? Like the underlying energy here wants to bring more joy to the world. It wants to make things better for everyone. However, we all know that that's not how often these things get conveyed, right? It becomes critical. It becomes, something that people don't want to hear. It's the timing's off. I mean, this is something else to really play around with in this, between the 24th and the 29th of March is we can notice where things aren't working. We can have opinions that we don't have to share unless somebody asks us.
And then we could say, do you really want to know?
Well, Christine, as you said that, I was thinking because Hazel also has this soothing quality. So my sense is it would smooth over that need to just react with our opinion, and give us that spaciousness to respond more appropriately.
Well, and the energy is really, I mean, in human design, these are what we call projected channels, right? This is a channel that really only works when it's invited. The energy has to be invited. And this is true all the time, not just during these transits, right? And so recognize, and we all know this, right? If you've lived any number of years on the planet, you know that if somebody's not ready to hear something, it does not matter what you say. It does not matter how you say it. It does not matter how much offering of kindness and compassion. It doesn't matter. It's not going to land. And then you yourself are going to feel frustrated that somebody's not listening to you, right? And so you compound your own struggle. Right? So this is going to be, I think, a really nice opportunity to just notice that and just play around with it some.
Like 25, and there was like with the constriction and the sort of the fears around that are sort of good for our survival. 17 has that too in terms of the like there's all of these dissatisfactions and things that come up from the judgments we make about our experience, but they're also what like lets younger people challenge the status quo. So there's upsides and downsides to all of these things, and it's quite fascinating to so track is like, is this taking us somewhere that's going to be, in a better place? And I guess that's where the foresight comes in. Is like, can I see a trajectory for like all those years ago with the love-ins and the anti-war demonstrations and things? It's like you could see where there was a positivity, and then you look and you say, okay, I can see where the downsides of what's going on are here too. So looking forward and recognizing that we're still going to be riding a wave no matter what happens. Now, is there a Gemmo for riding the wave?
Always, Lois. Always.
Yeah, I think, Lois, you're just talking about very much the yin and the yang of life, right? Like everything has a polarity. And I think this is a really important thing for us to remember right now. Like it's hard for me to think of in my lifetime a time where the world looked more chaotic and more out of step and out of bounds and kind of on a trajectory that seems not helpful and great for most people on the planet. And in the understanding of how energy works, the opposite is also true, right? Like things that are amazing come out of times that are awful. We all know this, right? And so being able to be with this idea that right now my opinion is the world's going to hell, that I don't have to hold on to that too hard, right? Like it is also equally true that it is birthing through some process that I am unable to fully comprehend, but I trust is for our benefit and in the end will come out as it's supposed to.
So I think in this, like, with a practice, it would be like being willing to look at other perspectives, even if you don't agree with them. It's just to actually just listen to them and see what you can take in and how are other people experiencing what's going on and seeing what's happening, so that you're starting to look at it from different angles, and then sort of being able to recognize, because there's so many different ways to see the world, that maybe our own opinions are not as solid as we think they are, and holding them more loosely, but not being so tied to them, because I think that would make life a lot easier. Well,
I think we're here.
sounded like that was the final word. All right. So thank you for being with us, and we hope we'll see you next time.